Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was neglected and he became the emperor, rewrite X overs. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Flashback Konoha main gates. They had just returned from the Uchiha retrieval mission. The entire group that had gone were beaten and heavily injured. Shikamaru, Rock Lee and Kiba were injured, but their wounds were minor compared to those of Choji and Neji. The Sand siblings even had to help carry the two of them back to Konoha. Naruto, however, had the worst of the injuries. A Chidori wound the size of a soccer ball was embedded in Naruto's chest. The Kyuubi was healing him, but the evidence of the wound was still there. Kakashi had to carry Naruto the entire way back to the village. Despite the injuries, the group was successful in its mission. The Uchiha was in tow, unconscious and carried in Gaara's sand tomb. Sasuke also received major injuries during his fight with Naruto. The Kyuubi's burn marks on his body were self-evident. His chakra levels were depleted and his cuts were deep. A crowd had gathered to the main gates to see the group return. The other Konoha 11 had shown up as well as Tsunade. The crowd that had gathered saw the burn marks as Sasuke as he was released by Gaara. They knew that it could only be the Kyuubi's doing. Murderer! Look at what you've done to the only Uchiha! Yelled one villager. That boy needs to be locked up. Konoha is in danger if he gets loose. Yelled another. I say we get rid of him now before it's too late. Yelled a pink-haired villager as others started to agree. The crowd would turn into a riot if it wasn't for Tsunade. Enough! Yelled Tsunade. Any villagers who defy the Sandame's law will be executed immediately. Tsunade was seriously pissed that villagers supported the Uchiha traitor over Naruto. She gave off so much killer intent that the crowd immediately dispersed. Tsunade ordered that Naruto, Choji and Neji were to be taken to her private quarters for immediate treatment. Sasuke was to be locked up and would receive treatment last, considering Tsunade could care less about the Uchihas at the moment. Once the Anbu had taken everyone away, Tsunade ordered Kakashi and Shikamaru in her office when she was done with Naruto, Choji and Neji. Hokage office. Tsunade was able to give immediate medical attention to all three shinobi with little complication. In fact, Naruto had healed up so much to the point that all he needed was rest. Choji and Neji needed much more work, but would make full recoveries and be released to the care of their families the next day. Tsunade now sat in her office, physically and emotionally tired, but needed to know the details of the mission and called Shikamaru and Kakashi. Once there, Shikamaru explained the challenges that they faced while trying to prevent Sasuke from defecting. He made sure to detail everything that he saw, but also informed Tsunade that she was better off asking the others once they were treated. Kakashi told Tsunade about the most pressing concern, how both Sasuke and Naruto had fought and heavily injured each other. Just as he was about to start, Danzo, Homura and Kaharu had barged their way into Tsunade's office. What is the meaning of this? Tsunade yelled, not liking the way her advisors walked into her office unannounced. Calm down Tsunade-sama, we are just here to listen to the reports that your shinobi were giving. We as the elders need to be here to help you make some important decisions going forward, explained Danzo, as the three took their positions behind Tsunade. TCH, was the only response Tsunade gave before having Kakashi explain. He explained about how the fight between the two went. They fought each other as though they were going to kill the other, holding nothing back. Naruto had tapped into the Kyuubi's power and Sasuke had activated his cursed seal. In the end, neither had won. However, both did inflict the maximum amount of damage they could without killing each other. Kakashi added that he believed Naruto had won, using the power of the Kyuubi to stop Sasuke from defecting. Though he couldn't control it, he was successful in incapacitating the Uchiha, which allowed them to return him home. Tsunade seemed to accept the debrief, however, her advisors were not so keen. They were worried about the Kyuubi coming loose again. The fact that Naruto couldn't control it only worried both Homura and Koharu. In addition to the fact, he had harmed the last Uchiha. They were not concerned about the fact that Sasuke had almost defected. Danzo, on the other hand, loved hearing this type of report. Although he outwardly was wary, on the inside, he almost couldn't contain the excitement of possibilities that the boy possessed. Naruto was Danzo's ticket to the Hokage seat and was going to become his ultimate weapon loyal to only Konoha. Tsunade couldn't deal with this stupidity at the moment. She ordered everyone out of her office so she could think about her next move. Unfortunately, the next moves were already in motion, which would change Konoha's future forever. Streets of Konoha. Naruto was out of the care of Tsunade a couple of days after they returned. Due to the Kyuubi's healing, his wounds closed quickly and he felt really good. Good enough to walk the streets and get some ramen, despite Tsunade's orders to stay in bed. As he walked the streets, he noticed his friends sitting in yakiniku queue. They were all huddled on one table, discussing the events of the past couple of days. As Naruto got closer, he was about to say hello until he heard their discussion. That baka nearly killed Sasuke-kun. What kind of person does that to our precious Sasuke? Yelled two bimbos who had pink and blonde hair respectively. Mendokus, you two really are pieces of work. You do realize that Sasuke was leaving the village, right? Shikamaru retorted, annoyed at the way Sakura and especially Ino were talking about the situation. Well, he didn't have to go batshit crazy and almost kill him. Screamed Ino. If it wasn't for Naruto, your precious Sasuke wouldn't even be in the village right now, Shikamaru said, with Choji nodding in agreement as he put another piece of steak in his mouth. Are you seriously defending him right now, Shikamaru? He nearly killed all of us. He lost control. It looked as though he was the Kyuubi reincarnate himself. Kiba butted in. How can you not be defending him right now? You do realize what the council is going to do to him, right? This is our friend we are talking about, Kiba. A friend that we all used to cut class with and play pranks on the village with when we were little. Don't you remember that, Naruto? Shikamaru said with disgust. Though he did realize that Naruto was a Jinchuriki and had lost control, Shikamaru was smart enough to know that Naruto was a person he still considered a friend. I do remember that, Naruto, but that was before I knew what type of monster he would become, replied Kiba, which sparked a heated debate between Shikamaru, Kiba, Sakura and Ino. Even Choji butted in to back up Shikamaru. The others on the table though remained silent. Hinata, Shino, Neji, Lee and Tenten couldn't bring themselves to speak. Hinata was too nervous to say anything. Shino didn't know how to approach the matter with this teammate and other classmates. Tenten barely knew Naruto and wasn't there for the mission to give an opinion. Neji and Lee, on the other hand, didn't know what to say. Despite the fact that Naruto had made a tremendous impact on both their lives when it was time to defend him, they swallowed their words. They didn't know how or what to think of the situation. It was a mistake they would regret in the future. Naruto, on the other hand, was in shock. He couldn't believe that some of his friends would blame him for what happened to Sasuke. He also noticed the silence that came from the others. He thought they were all friends, especially after what he had just gone through. With the villagers, he could deal with their hatred towards him. However, seeing people who he thought were his friends attack him or stay silent on the matter, left a large wound in Naruto's heart. As he was about to leave, an Anbu appeared before him and ordered him to go to the council room. It was here that Naruto had gotten the worst news of all. Present-time council chambers. Genin Uzumaki Naruto, Tsunade started, trying to power through the order she was about to give. You have been hereby banished from Konoha, Tsunade stuttered, which sent shocked Naruto to the core. Why? Tsunade Bachan, why? Naruto squeaked out. Because of your actions during the Uchiha retrieval mission, you brat. You nearly killed the last Uchiha from Konoha. A council member from the civilian side spoke. We can't risk letting that thing get loose again. We should have killed you while we had the chance. Yelled a pink-haired council member. To think the Yondaime wasted his life for you disgusts me. We should have banished you long ago. If it wasn't for you, the Uchiha would have never left. Enough. Tsunade yelled as she slammed her fist on the table. Naruto, you have until tomorrow to pack your things and leave. Tsunade managed, trying to withhold the tears that would soon fall. Naruto, confused and angered, decided to make one final stand. So you're going to banish a loyal shinobi for a traitor? Is that it? I bring your precious Uchiha home to you and this is the thanks I get. Naruto started, the Kyuubi chakra starting to emit from his body. The civilian council members started to get nervous while the shinobi council prepared for the worst. You will regret today. From now on Konoha's days are numbered. I will make sure that without fail, this village burns down to the ground at my hands, Naruto said as his eyes started to red as the chakra started to become thicker. Two Anbu appeared behind Naruto and knocked him out. With that, the Kyuubi's chakra dispersed. The council seemed to rest a little easier now. Take him back to his home. He has things to get in order, Tsunade ordered as the two Anbu shunshin Naruto and themselves away. That boy talks big, however his words are as meaningless as his skills. Like he could really do anything to any of us, one councilman spoke as he recomposed himself. You do realize that boy single-handedly managed to bring the Uchiha home. If it wasn't for that boy, your precious Uchiha would be with Orochimaru planning this village's destruction. I would choose your next words wisely, councilman. If not, that seat you sit in will be empty the next time we meet, Tsunade threatened as the councilman looked away, trembling in fear. Now everyone can get the out of my office. Naruto's house. Naruto found himself in his house as night had fallen. Loud cheers could be heard from the streets as villagers and shinobi alike celebrated the return of their precious Uchiha and also of the news that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was going to be banished. Naruto believed that everything he had experienced was just a dream until he read the note that was left for him near his bed. It was the official order of Naruto's banishment. Naruto couldn't believe it. Not only did his friends betray him, but also the village that he called home. He wanted to become Hokage so that people would accept him for who he is and not for who he carried inside of him. But if this is what the village wanted, he would definitely make sure that it would burn to the ground. And by his hands only. Naruto packed everything he needed for his journey. During his packing, instead of thinking of all the good things that he did for Konoha or even the very few people who saw him as a human being like Ayame and Tuki, he thought of all the mean things and poor treatment he received from the village. He remembered the vile words that the villagers said about him when they returned from their mission. He recalled the numerous times that villagers made sure that their children wouldn't talk to him because he was the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. He remembered that he was called the dead last and would never make it as a shinobi. He remembered everything. Naruto wouldn't wait to leave the village by sunrise. He would leave immediately. However, he had one last parting gift to Konoha. The village wanted a celebration, they would definitely get one. He snuck into the armory and got as many explosive tags that he could find. Being a prankster had some perks. He set up the tags all around the village. He also set up tags around his house, making sure to destroy the great memories he had in it alone. He bid it farewell, took his things and went to the top of the Hokage monument. As he stood atop the Yondaime's head, Naruto took one last look at the bustling village. He was disgusted at the celebration that was taking place. People celebrating a traitor and the banishment of a loyal shinobi. As soon as the anger grew within him, Naruto activated the tags. A series of explosions all around the village caused a panic and a frenzy. His house exploded and almost made the entire building collapse. Naruto could only chuckle at the destruction he had just caused. The celebratory cheers were now turning into panicked screams as the shinobi were trying to make sure people were safe. Naruto left a note on top of the Yondaime's head. It was left for whoever found it to know that it was he who activated the explosive tags. This is only the beginning, Konoha. Your days are numbered. Be prepared for the destruction at the hands of the dead last, he said to himself as he vanished. After leaving the village, Naruto wandered around Fire Country for a few days. Though he left the village earlier than expected, Naruto really didn't have a specific location he was locked on going to. He had brought a map but deemed it a little too hard to read at the moment. However, as long as he was out of Konoha was fine with him. Unfortunately, he started to get hungry after running out of his supply of instant ramen. He decided that he needed to stop and get some food before continuing his journey. He entered a small trading outpost on the outskirts of Fire Country. No one seemed to notice or pay any attention to him as he entered. He looked for a food place and as luck would have it, there was a small ramen shop. It wasn't overly crowded so Naruto was able to get his food quickly. When he entered, he noticed two figures wearing long black cloaks with red clouds. As Naruto sat down to eat he could feel the aura of two figures standing there watching him. He was almost going to say something and ask them if they wanted anything, but unfortunately, the smell of ramen and the feeling of hunger overtook the young shinobi. Once he finished about 5 bowls, he paid, then exited. He noticed that the two figures that had been watching him were now gone. As Naruto continued on, he entered a narrow road with many trees within its surroundings. Naruto seemed to be the only occupant on the path. Just then the two figures jumped out of nowhere to confront the young wanderer. Uzumaki Naruto, the holder of the strongest Biju, the Kyuubi. You will need to come with us, spoke one of the figures who held a large sword covered in bandages. I'm sick and tired of people ordering me around. The only way you'll be taking me is over my dead body, replied Naruto as he scowled at the two figures before him and took a defensive stance. Well, that was the plan, grinned the figure with the sword. He prepared to strike Naruto until something interfered with him. Wait, Kisame. Naruto, where is your hit I ate? And why are you alone all the way in these parts? Where is your squad? Asked Itachi as he took off his hat that was concealing his identity. What squad? As you can see, I no longer myself with that disgusting village. You're Itachi, right? Sasuke's brother. You know some might have called me a hero for what I did, but instead, this is the thanks I get. Banishment, scowled Naruto as the venom in his voice was really evident when talking about Konoha. Why were you banished? Surely the village wouldn't have done something that stupid to let loose their most powerful weapon. Questioned a curious Itachi. Oi, Itachi, we don't have time for this. We need to capture the Gaki. Dead or alive, chimed Kisame as he had grown anxious at the chance to brag that it was he who captured the strongest Biju. Itachi waved him off and motioned for Naruto to explain. And boy did Naruto explain. As he finished his explanation, he made it known to Itachi the hate and anger he felt towards the one who caused his predicament. If it wasn't for your piece of shit brother, I wouldn't be in this mess. But now where were we? You said you wanted to capture me over my dead body, right? Let's see if you guys are really to be feared, said Naruto as he got into a defensive stance. He would not go down without a fight. With pleasure, replied Kisame as he grinned with the delight. Itachi, however, had to think about what he was about to do. On one hand, he was tasked at capturing the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and bring him back. However, after what Naruto explained that it was his little brother that was causing all this trouble and also the corruption that was going on in Konoha, Itachi couldn't help but mull over his choices here. In the past, no matter what the circumstances were, he was always loyal to the village first. He would do anything for the village, as evident by him massacring his entire clan. But now he was starting to think on his own for once. Using his own consciousness, Itachi started to think that maybe all of this evil and corruption could have been stopped had he made different decisions when he was in the village. He decided that he would be making his own decision for once. As Kisame swung Samahata down onto a weaponless Naruto, Itachi shushined in front of the young blonde to block the attack. Itachi, what the hell are you doing? You know what our orders are. We need to bring the kid in, said Kisame in shock that his own partner was defending the boy. I know what the orders are, but there will be a change of plans. We will not harm the boy nor will we take him back to the hideout. I know we've been partners up to this point, but this is where we part ways, replied Itachi as he took a fighting stance and faced his partner. Just as they were about to come to blows, both found that they were unable to move. Kuchiyos. Gamaguchi Shibari, Toad Mouth Bind. Jiraiya had come out of nowhere and ensnared both Akatsuki members. Naruto, Itachi and Kisame were surprised at the arrival of the Toad Sannin. Jiraiya had been watching the ordeal from a nearby tree. He was returning to Konoha after doing his research. He sensed the powerful chakra that had been emitted from afar and waited to observe the situation. Jiraiya had heard about Naruto's banishment through a scroll that Tsunade had sent via one of his messenger toads. Jiraiya became livid not only at the stupid council but Tsunade as well for her inability to do anything. On the flip side, Jiraiya knew that he was entrusted to be Naruto's godfather and guardian, yet he was not there for him. Instead, he was off indulging in his research and other pleasures. He never knew how hard of a life Naruto lived, and when they first met he thought very little of him. However, as time grew on, Naruto had shown Jiraiya the same determination and will that Jiraiya had seen in Minato. Jiraiya had now regretted not being there for Naruto and vowed to make it up to him by teaching him everything he knew and also telling him of his heritage. Though his current situation was sticky, Jiraiya vowed that he would do anything to make sure that Naruto would one day fulfill all of his dreams. As both the Akatsuki members were stuck and unable to move, Jiraiya used this opportunity to charge up 2 Rasengans and was ready to end the lives of 2 of the strongest shinobis alive until Naruto stepped in front of him. Jiraiya was caught off guard. Naruto, move. Do you know who they are? If we don't finish things right now our situation will be bad, exclaimed Jiraiya as he looked at Naruto bewilderedly. However, Naruto would not move. He explained to Jiraiya Itachi's change of heart and wanted to believe that there was still good in the Uchiha. Jiraiya eventually relented and released the Toad prison. Naruto, out of the goodness of his heart, asked both Itachi and Kisame to join him on his quest to destroy Konoha. Though he was wary of the 2 missing nin, he saw that they were not as bad as they seemed. Itachi accepted quickly and gave Kisame the option of joining or dying where he stood. Kisame finally relented after much pleading from Naruto. I guess this new mission could be fun as well. I think Samahata would appreciate some fresh bait, conceded the shark shinobi. Arrow Sennin, what about you? Will you join me in my journey to not only get revenge but rid this world of more corruption so that the peace you always dreamed of can happen? Asked Naruto as he wanted the person he saw as a grandfather figure in his life to join him as well. Like Itachi, Jiraiya was torn. Konoha was home to him. No matter how long he was away from the village, he would come back and enjoy being in the place where he grew up. He made so many memories in the village that it would be hard for him to leave. But after seeing the way Naruto was treated and the corruption that was brewing in the village, he accepted Naruto's offer. Plus he knew if he lost track of Naruto again, Minato and Kushina would make his experience in the afterlife very miserable. So where do we head off to now? Asked Kisame since they were now nomads and had no place to really call home. Maybe to Kiri. We can help with the war there. I happen to know a few of the rebels opposing the current Mizukage including Mei Terumi, spoke Jiraiya. Kiri would be too unstable right now. Maybe laying low in one of the smaller villages would be a good start. The Land of Iron would be an place, added Itachi. Let's head west, said Naruto in a dull voice. I overheard some messengers talking about that they almost died when they got close to the Great Wall. Naruto, you can't be serious. No shinobi from the east has ever gone there and made it back to tell their tales. Plus that place is just non-stop fighting. Though the 4 of us combined may be strong, but we wouldn't stand a chance on our own in the west, explained Jiraiya. Well, I would take my chances there than being hunted by everyone we see here, replied Naruto, plus maybe we can form an alliance or something with one of the groups out there. Well, we could lay low there. No one would dare try to find us and maybe by our luck we could rule the west, haha, joked Kisame with that last part. This only gave Naruto more motivation to head west. If he was to get revenge on Konoha, he would have to become stronger. The West seemed like a good place to start. Itachi saw the look of determination in Naruto's eyes and saw that his mind was made up. It's settled then, we will head west, spoke Itachi to break the silence. Meanwhile, Konoha Hokage's office. After Naruto left, the village was placed on high alert. The little prank that Naruto pulled reduced some areas of the village to rubble. In particular, parts of the Uchiha residence and also the Hokage Tower. Emergency crews were searching for people that may have been trapped under the rubble. From what they could tell, there were a few that were injured, but no casualties. Tsunade had a feeling inside of her that this may have been Naruto's doing, noticing that his apartment was also destroyed, but she couldn't blame the Gaki, he was banished for no good reason. On top of that, the people in the village worshipped the traitor he saved. After his banishment, Tsunade had gotten so drunk that no one, even Shizune, could reach her when the explosive tags went off in the village. Shizune and the Shinobi Council had to take charge to get emergency crews out to make sure people were safe. When Shizune had told Tsunade about what had happened, she could have cared less. She couldn't believe the stupidity of both the Civilian Council and the Shinobi Council. Not to mention her so-called advisors, who were more of a hindrance than anything. Tsunade became so distraught and was sick and tired of the people in the village that she had prepared to resign from her duties as Hokage. Unfortunately, she knew that there would be a fight for the Hokage title and most likely that Danzo would inherit it. Tsunade knew that the village would surely be destroyed if Danzo ran it. She didn't really care, but inside of her, there was still a small soft spot for Konoha. That is why she had picked the perfect candidate to lead. The only thing was being able to convince him. Then the knock on the door came. Come in. You called for me, Hokage-sama? Asked Kakashi as he made his way to the center of the room. Yes, I did, Kakashi. I have important matters to discuss with you, Tsunade said as the copy ninja sighed a little bit. If you were talking about my mission, it was a dead end. In fact, I felt like I was going on a wild goose chase if anything. Even Yamato stated that it was a waste of our time, Kakashi explained. I could care less about your mission, Kakashi. In fact, I don't even remember assigning you any mission, Tsunade said. An Anbu was sent to me with a message from you with an important mission. I was beginning to wonder how legit it was, but it had your signature. Anyways, that's beside the point. Can we talk about this later, Hokage-sama? I'm tired and would like to visit my students, Kakashi finished as he turned around to walk out. Kakashi, that's why you're here, Tsunade said as Kakashi stopped in his tracks. You're going to want to hear me out, Kakashi, as the copy ninja turned around to face the slug Sanin. Naruto's been banished, Tsunade stated bluntly as Kakashi got wide-eyed. His calmness had now turned to anger. He's what? Kakashi questioned. Tsunade went on to explain the entire story. The Civilian Council, as well as the elders, wanted to banish Naruto for losing control of the Kyuubi and nearly killing Sasuke. She also mentioned how the Shinobi Council also partially agreed to the banishment due to their concern of Naruto being unstable and losing control. When Tsunade finished explaining, she was breaking into tears. Kakashi, on the other hand, was furious. And you couldn't do anything stop this. Are you kidding me? And now you're leaving me with all of your problems to deal with here. I won't accept this, Tsunade. Kakashi yelled, angered at Tsunade's inability to stop the banishment. This is not a request, Kakashi. This is a order. You know as well as I do that Danzo would most likely become Hokage if I step down. Do you know how bad that will be for the village? Do you know how many people he's going to be sending out to look for Naruto? He's going to use the Gaki as a pawn in his plans. Jiraiya has already said that he's looking for Naruto, but I'm going to go and look for him myself. Kami knows Minato and Kushina are tossing in their graves right now, knowing that the village banished their son for a traitor and I couldn't do anything about it. I have to live with that for the rest of my life, Tsunade started as Kakashi decided to hear her out. This is a temporary assignment, Kakashi. I'm going to find Naruto, and when I do, you will be the first to know. In the meantime, besides Shizune and Jiraiya, you are the only one I trust right now. You will be communicating with me about everything that goes on in the village. You want to help Naruto, you need to make sure that none of the scumbags from this village ever try to lay a hand on him. Naruto does not want to return to the village. He made that very clear. When I find him, I will let you know, and then you can come to see your student. Kami knows you may be the only one he trusts, Tsunade finished as Kakashi pondered the thought for a moment. On one hand, he was furious at Tsunade and her inability to do anything as Hokage. On the other hand, being Hokage himself would let him protect Naruto from the village. Kakashi knew that Danzo and others from the village would most want Naruto for their own power. He would ensure that he would hold things down and make some wholesale changes to both the shinobi and the civilian council while Tsunade and Jiraiya looked for Naruto. The moment you find him, you will let me know so that I can leave this forsaken village, Kakashi seriously said. The moment I find him, you'll be the first to know, Tsunade responded as the two prepared and discussed their plans. With Naruto, Jiraiya, Itachi and Kisame were heading west towards the Great Wall that separated the West from the shinobi world. They were traveling incognito and were not seen as they made their way through Iwagakure. After a few days of traveling, they finally made it to the wall during the dead of night. The wall was long, but not very tall. From what the four could observe, there were many different entrances into the west along the wall. They decided that they should camp out at one of them to try and see if they could find any weaknesses. Unfortunately, there were people patrolling the wall, both on the ground and from up high. The four shinobi decided that they needed a plan to get over the wall or through it without being detected. We need to scout the place to find its weak spot. I can't believe there are so many guys for one entrance, Kisame said, a little surprised by the heavy guards that were patrolling the area. Don't worry about that. I have already let my contact know where we are and if there is anything he can do to help us, Jiraiya explained, intriguing the other three. How do you know people from the West Arrow Senin? Naruto curiously asked. I concur, Jiraiya-sama. It would have been nice to know this information beforehand, Itachi added. Well, he's not really a contact, as I only met him once and it was at least a few months ago. Secondly, he's an interesting fellow. I'm not sure if he is to be trusted, Jiraiya explained. Then why did you tell where we were? That'll get us killed, old man. Kisame furiously said. He's only one guy and there's four of us, I'm sure he won't be a problem if he does become our enemy, Jiraiya retorted. Then, there was a large bang at the entrance. The gates to the entrance had blown open and several men flying out of it. The guards on the top of the wall dropped down to try and contain whoever or whatever it was that destroying the entrance. As the guards attacked, they were sent back flying left and right. It was as though whoever was attacking wasn't even trying. The four shinobi hid behind some trees and bushes to get a better look. They were very surprised by what they saw. A man with a bald head, in a yellow one-piece jumpsuit with a golden buckle on his belt with a white cape, was knocking everything in sight. He was moving so fast that Itachi could barely pick him up with his Sharingan. The guards stood no chance at even touching him. The last guard literally took a shit in his pants before being punched way up in the sky. Once the dust settled, the man looked bored. He seemed really uninterested in the events that just occurred. He was scanning the area, looking for something. Is that him, Jiraiya? Kisame whispered, not wanting to be heard, and only got a nod in response from Jiraiya. The four shinobi were shocked at the ease in which the man took out an entire squad of heavily armed guards without dropping a sweat. He would most certainly become a problem if he were to be an enemy to us, Jiraiya thought. He decided to step out into the open and get the man's attention. Anyo, excuse me, he started as the man turned around to look at him. It's been a long time, hasn't it? Jiraiya nervously said, as the man was still staring at him, studying him. Oh, it's you, was the man's dull response. Thank Kami, you remember me. I guess you got my message. Thanks for meeting us here, Jiraiya said, still unsure of the man and his intentions. Yeah, well, if you want to come. Follow me, the man said as he turned around and started walking through the once guarded entrance and what was left of it. Jiraiya signaled for Naruto, Itachi and Kisame to come out and follow him, as they slowly walked behind Jiraiya's contact. As they walked, Jiraiya caught up with the man and introduced him to the other three. They found out his name was Saitama. He and Jiraiya had met because he had accidentally jumped over the wall during some training and landed in the east. He was lost and Jiraiya just so happened to be the one to give him directions. He thanked him and walked with Jiraiya for a bit, the two telling stories. Before he returned to the west, Jiraiya had given Saitama a copy of Ika Ika Tactics, which the latter fell in love with. A pervert at heart, Saitama gave Jiraiya a contact card, in case he ever wanted to come to the west to advertise the book. Naruto, Itachi and Kisame could only facepalm when hearing this. There are perverts in the west too, they thought. Itachi wanted a little bit of background of the west as they continued on. Just as Saitama started, a group of bandits appeared out of the forest and attacked. They were ordinary bandits, trying to make a quick buck. There were at least 20 of them, all carrying some type of weapon. Saitama, Jiraiya, Itachi and Kisame easily dispatched most of them, however, Naruto was in a bit of trouble. Two bandits were teaming up and giving Naruto a really hard time. They had backed him into a corner, and Naruto had already used up most of his clones. One bandit was distracting Naruto with a sickle and chain, forcing Naruto to dodge and deflect the attack. The other was sneaking up behind an unsuspecting Naruto, who lost track of him. He was about to slash Naruto when out of nowhere, Saitama punched his head and knocked it right off the bandit's body. The lone bandit now tried to run, only to be cut down by Kisame. Are you alright, Naruto-san? Saitama asked as Naruto looked at him nervously and responded with a head nod. You need to be more aware of your surroundings, Gaki. This is life or death. You could have gotten killed, you know, Kisame added, a little disappointed that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was so weak. Calm down, Kisame. With how Naruto was treated in that village, it is no surprise his skills are not up to par yet, Itachi cut in, with Naruto feeling a little embarrassed. Well, if we're going to survive here, we can't keep looking out for him as we defend ourselves, Kisame responded. Itachi knew Kisame was right. If the rumors about the West were true, the four shinobi and their new comrade would be in non-stop fighting. If they wanted to increase their chances of survival, Naruto would need to improve his skills, and fast. Itachi looked at Jiraiya for some guidance, but the Toad Sannin was a bit lost in his thoughts. After a few moments, Jiraiya snapped out of it. He had a plan. Naruto would train with all of them. Jiraiya and Itachi would train Naruto to improve his ninjutsu. Kisame would help Naruto learn kenjutsu and also how to properly use and manipulate his large chakra reserves. Saitama agreed to help Naruto with taijutsu, though he explained it would be hard to spar with him since he has the ability to kill people with just one punch. Naruto agreed without hesitation. He knew he was still weak and that there was so much more that he could improve on. He wanted to make Konoha pay for his banishment, by turning into the deadliest and strongest shinobi known to mankind. Saitama picked up on this as well. He realized that Naruto had something about him that stood out. He couldn't exactly put his finger on it, but he knew that there was something about the young blonde that told him he would be great one day. As the group continued on, Saitama went back to explaining the history of the West, from what he knew. So here in the West, it's just non-stop fighting. He started as the four shinobi listened intently to what he was about to say. That's all I know, he finished. The four shinobi deadpanned. They were very disappointed with that explanation. Saitama explained that he knew there were some factions in the West, but didn't belong to any and was basically a loner. His explanation. They talk too much and have long explanations. I find that boring. The four Eastern shinobi nearly fainted at the stupidity of his reasoning. Jiraiya could only massage his temples, thinking of a certain Nara who was the same way. So you have no allies here whatsoever, Naruto gasped, getting a nod from Saitama in return. They were doomed. Coming to the west seemed like a mistake now, Naruto thought. The group continued walking into the forest. They decided that they should set up camp for the night, with 2 at a time as guards. They found a little campsite area that looked abandoned. They set up 2 tents that they could use for rest if they weren't on guard duty. Unfortunately, none of them would be getting any sleep for the evening. As the group settled in, Naruto and Jiraiya had gotten the first watch. They had lit a fire to keep themselves warm for the night. Out of nowhere, the group was surrounded by 8 figures. All had taken fighting stances, as Naruto and Jiraiya did the same. One of the shorter figures stepped forward, his face became visible due to the campfire. He looked like a teenager, maybe 4 to 5 years older than Naruto. You are trespassing in Ryazanpaku territory. State your business. You are trespassing in Ryazanpaku territory. State your business, the young man said as Itachi, Kisame, and Saitama made their presence known. They also readied themselves for battle, but something felt off. Especially for Itachi, who had his Sharingan activated. He noticed something different about these strangers. Their chakra levels were different. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Their power levels were spiking off the charts. We mean no harm, Jiraiya stepped up to speak, although a bit nervously. He realized that they were outnumbered, and even though they were strong, these people seemed stronger. We are new here, we have come from the east. We did not realize we were trespassing on anyone's lands. Please forgive us for our intrusion. If you would like, we can leave immediately, Jiraiya finished as the young man looked at him with a brow. Oh, and where will you go after? He asked. Jiraiya pondered for a moment. There really was nowhere else to go from here. They could turn back and try their luck in the east again, but that wasn't really an option considering Naruto wanted to come west. Unfortunately, they were all out of options at this point. It seems like we will have to turn back and return to where we came from, Jiraiya said, which got him a disappointing look from Naruto. Itachi and Kisame reluctantly agreed with Jiraiya's assessment. There was no way they could find a place to stay in the west, especially if everyone they met were like the people they were surrounded by. The young man just observed the 4 eastern shinobi and Saitama before nodding his head. He noticed the disappointing look on the young blonde's face as he dejectedly started to walk back to his tent and start packing his things. The rest of the group did the same as they got their belongings together and started to break down the campsite. They never noticed the large figure approaching the area. My, what is all the commotion about tonight? Spoke the figure as the young man who was observing Naruto turned around to greet the new visitor. Ah, Elder. We had some intruders here at the campsite. They seem to be strong fighters from the east, but they have come in peace. They were just packing their things and leaving, he said as the elder now stepped closer, observing the group. Where will they go? The elder asked. They said they will most likely return home, grandfather, said a girl, who had long, blonde hair. The elder seemed to accept that answer before he had an idea. A small grin crept on his face as Naruto and the others were just about done with getting ready to leave. Nonsense. The elder started as the eastern shinobi turned to see who this new person talking was. We have plenty of lodging here for them to stay at, the elder said, looking in the direction of the eastern shinobi. Excuse me, elder, although I do respect your idea, we do not know these people. They are strangers, and could be spies from one of the warring states, the young man said. Nonsense, Ken-chan. They have said that they mean no harm. I'm sure they are all good people. Am I right? The elder asked as the eastern shinobi bowed their heads while Saitama just nodded. Not to mention they can pay the mandatory 10,000 ryo fee per person it is to stay here, the elder whispered as Kenichi could only shake his head. It's always about the money, the young apprentice thought. We would be honored, sir, but we do not want to be a hindrance to you and your people, Itachi spoke as the elder started to laugh. A hindrance? Don't worry about that, You have no place to stay and have traveled far. You all must be tired. Plus, it's dangerous to go back out there at this time of night. Bandits have been known to frequent the area. So please come. At least stay for a few days so that you can rest and continue your journey, the elder said. Jiraiya, Itachi, Kisame, and Naruto huddled before making their decision. Saitama was left standing by himself, still looking bored as ever. What if this is some type of trick to get us and then rob us of all we have? Kisame asked. Well, not like we can do anything about it anyway. They outnumber us and their strength looks far superior to ours, Itachi answered. Jiraiya and Naruto agreed with his answer. It was a lose-lose regardless. However, they decided that they would be on guard at all times and that they would only stay for a day or two. They then broke the huddle. If it is no trouble, we would like to accept your kind offer, Jiraiya said as the elder was ecstatic. Wonderful. Now, before you can lodge here, however, there is one more important matter to discuss, the elder said, now in a more serious tone. The shinobi were prepared for the worst. There is a fee for staying in our dojo. It will be about 10,000 ryo fee for each of you, the elder stated as the shinobi dropped their heads in disappointment. They knew it was too good to be true. They definitely didn't have 50,000 ryo to fork over, and even if they did, that means they would be completely broke in a totally foreign area. Not to mention that now, they could be scammed out of a place to stay. Now, don't look so disappointed. Even if you don't have 10,000 ryo for each of you right now, I'm sure we can come up with some kind of plan for it. The elder said as Jiraiya started to fidget around his pocket. He took out his wallet and started to count how much money he had. He was a bit shocked at the amount and turned to the others with a small smile on his face. I have 50,000 ryo exactly, Jiraiya said, taking out the money and handing it to the young blonde girl who stepped up to take it. She counted it and nodded her head to her grandfather. Perfect. It is settled then. Please follow us back to the compound so we can show you to your rooms, the elder said as the Eastern Shinobi and Saitama did as they were told. They were followed by the 8 figures as they made their way to the large compound. The compound was huge, probably as big as some of the shinobi family compounds in Konoha. The compound of Ryazanpaku had 2 large buildings that were used for housing and other miscellaneous purposes, while the dojo was even bigger than the 2 buildings combined. There was also a hot spring in the forest in addition to the campsite. There was a large main gate at the front, and a little down the street from the compound was Ma Kensai's acupuncture clinic and Kuetsuji's orthopedic practice. The Eastern Shinobi plus Saitama were each given a room in the main building. They had makeshift beds made for them and were given privacy away from the other masters of Ryazanpaku. Although, there would always be a master on watch of their new guests just in case. The Eastern Shinobi and Saitama made themselves comfortable in their new arrangements. Though they made plans of always being alert and on guard, they felt that this place was a bit different. There were little occupants in the compound other than the masters, the elder, and the young man and woman. All of them remained up that night, not being able to get any sleep. Well, all of them except Naruto. He was beat. The journey here to the west took them long enough, and then having to deal with so many different things, Naruto needed sleep. He knew that in the future, he may not get much of it, so getting the most of it now was the best he could do. The next morning, Naruto awoke to the bright light of the sun hitting his face through the window in his room. Compared to the last few days, today seemed like a beautiful day. He sat up, rubbed his eyes and went through his morning routine. He found Itachi, Jiraiya, Kisame, and Saitama sitting in the living area, all sitting on chairs. It was evident to Naruto that they did not get any sleep. You're finally up, Gaki, Jiraiya said, smiling to the young blonde as Naruto nodded. Itachi, Kisame, and Saitama looked up to see the young Jinchuriki approaching them. How was your rest, Naruto? Itachi asked. It was good, probably the best sleep I've gotten the past few days, Naruto responded. Good, because that is probably the most sleep you're going to get for a while, Gaki, Kisame added, which got a head nod from Naruto. As they all sat down in silence, a knock came at the door of the living area. The door slid open and the young man from the previous night entered along with the young woman. I hope we aren't interrupting anything, the young woman asked. Nothing at all. We were all just waking up, Jiraiya responded with a weary smile. Perfect. Well, we would like to properly introduce ourselves to you all before anything else. My name is Mu Furinji and this is Kenichi Shirahama. We are students here at Ryazanpaku. We know you all might be a little suspicious of us and to be honest, the feeling is a bit mutual, however, you are our guests. And since you are our guests, we have prepared breakfast for all of you if you would like. We didn't know what you wanted so we prepared plenty of options for you, Mew finished as Naruto perked up at breakfast. The group was a bit hungry and hadn't eaten in a while. Breakfast sounded like a terrific idea. They all got up and followed Mew and Kenichi to one of the rooms in the dojo where the breakfast spread was laid out. Everything from eggs, bacon, potatoes, vegetables, baked goods, cereal, milk were all laid out nicely on the table for them to choose from. Naruto's mouth salivated at the great-looking food, though the table looked like it was missing something. Anyo, do you guys have ramen by any chance? He asked, much to the chagrin of Jiraiya. Oi Naruto, just eat the food here. They are not our servants, Jiraiya scolded. Mew could only chuckle a bit at the request. We do have ramen actually. However, if you would like some, you will have to wait for lunch or dinner, she answered, which Naruto perked up at. He couldn't wait for ramen at his next meal. Please eat. I would hurry before the other masters arrive. We prepared a lot of food, but they will clean us out easily, Kenichi said as the Eastern shinobi hurriedly went to get their food. Even Itachi and Saitama were eager to start eating. As they all sat down, the 8 other masters and the elder started to trickle into the food area, and just like Kenichi said, the masters started to clean house with the food. The group noticed how fast the masters ate and how they immediately went for more. In fact, the masters ate so fast that the Eastern shinobi group barely even saw them put the food into their mouths. They were amazed that even a small thing like eating made these Westerners, people that they should fear. Naruto was even more amazed. If he wanted to become strong here in the West, it seemed like this was the place to do it. He would need to convince Jiraiya that this was a place they needed to be at and that they should stay as long as possible. After breakfast, Mew and Kenichi took the group to the main room in the dojo. They had mentioned that the elder wanted to speak to them. When they got there, the elder was already waiting for them. As they entered the large room, the group sat in the center of the dojo, in front of the elder, while Kenichi and Mew sat off to the side of the room. My apologies at breakfast. I know we didn't get to properly introduce ourselves to you all. Usually, when we get guests, my granddaughter and Ken-chan cook up quite the meal for us all. It's a real treat and we know that it won't last, so we must eat as much as we can. Anyways, that's beside the fact. My name is Hayato Furinji. I am the elder here at Ryazanpaku. I know you have already met my granddaughter Mew and Ken-chan. What are all your names? The Eastern shinobi went down the line and Saitama also gave his name. Well, it is nice to formally meet you all. Ken-chan here tells me that you all seem like strong fighters from the East. If I may ask, what brings you here to Ryazanpaku? Well, elder, specifically we are from a village called Konoha. We are escaping persecution at the hands of many dangerous people there, Jiraiya explained as this piqued the interest of the elder. Oh, and why might you all be suffering from persecution? Have you all done something you were not supposed to? He asked. No elder. We haven't done anything wrong. We also didn't mean to trespass on your territory. We are just looking for a place to lay low. There are many people that want to use Naruto, Jiraiya explained. And why would people want to use young Naruto here? He seems like a good boy who hasn't done anything wrong, the elder stated. He was banished for doing his job, elder, Jiraiya said. I'm not sure I understand. The elder questioned. Jiraiya turned to Naruto. It was now his turn to speak. Naruto explained the situation he was in. How he was sent with a squad of his peers to make sure that one of their own didn't end up in the hands of Orochimaru. Naruto explained that they were successful in their mission. However, he had lost control of the Kyuubi, who had been sealed inside of him. He explained that people in the village are scared of him and treated him poorly because they thought he was the reincarnate of the Kyuubi. Naruto explained his childhood growing up, how he never had anyone to really look after him, and how he just wanted to be accepted by everyone. He had a dream of being Hokage of his village, but now that dream had been crushed. Itachi felt pain and disappointment when Naruto explained his life. He was very disappointed in not only the village, but at himself for what had become of both Naruto and Sasuke. The elder Furinji could only look on in astonishment at the story of Naruto. He didn't understand how people could be so stupid about things like these. Mew was quietly crying, listening to Naruto's predicament that he was put in. Kenichi also was disappointed and saddened for the young shinobi and the life he had to live. When Naruto finished, he could feel that anger boiling up inside of him again. Just talking about it made bad memories come back to him. He remembered everything that was said about him by not only the villagers, but also people he thought were his friends. He remembered those final words that he spoke at the last council meeting. He would make sure Konoha would burn at his hands, without fail. The elder Furinji studied the young blonde boy for a minute. He could see the anger in the boy's eyes. He could also see the hurt. He also saw that Naruto loved the place he grew up in. Despite the hate he received, he could tell that Naruto never gave up on his dreams and goals that he put forth for himself. Though they had just met, the elder had already sensed that this young boy was going to do big things in the future. Maybe, just maybe, he is the one, the elder thought. I do apologize for your circumstances, young Naruto. No one, especially one so young, should ever go through what you have. However, I must tell you, here in the West, all we know is fighting to survive. I'm sure you all heard the stories of this place. Most of what you've heard is probably true, the elder stated as he started to explain the history of the West. The West has never seen peace. Where you all come from in the East, there are periods where there is little to no fighting. Here in the West, we are lucky if we get a week off. There are factions and warlords here that cannot be compared to where you all are from. In fact, I would be so much to say that if you all, maybe besides Saitama, were to go out on your own here, you wouldn't last a month. Though you may be considered strong in the East, here in the West, you are just in the middle of the pack in terms of fighters, the elder explained. The Eastern shinobi were now a bit discouraged at this. Even Kisame was a bit worried about their chances here. However, I do see potential in all of you, especially you, young Naruto. You have a strong determination and will inside of you that no matter the circumstances, you push on. You have your values and you stay true to them. You have not been given the proper training yet, but you have the potential to be strong, even stronger than I or any of the masters here in this dojo. Naruto perked up at hearing this. After stepping foot in the West, he didn't think he would ever match up to anybody here. However, hearing the elder say that he had the most potential out of all of them, stirred that determination in Naruto even more. Originally, the plan was to let you all stay here for a few days. However, I see now that you all will be a tremendous to not only this dojo but to everyone here in it. I have made the decision that you may all stay here for as long as you like. As long as you agree to abide by our rules and fight for our side, you will always be welcome here. I see that we have similar values. I understand you want revenge on your village, but you also have a dream of peace. We also are fighting for peace. Quite frankly, I think it is time the West sees its share of that. We have only known fighting, but I do think that you, young Naruto, can make that dream a reality. Jiraiya, Itachi, Kisame and even Saitama were shocked at the elder's words. Naruto was not strong at all, yet the elder saw how much untapped potential the young blonde had. I thought after all this time that Minato was the child of prophecy that the old geezer Toad was talking about. I was wrong. Naruto is definitely the child of prophecy, Jiraiya thought. We are gracious of your kind words, elder. We will abide by your laws and fight by your side and be any kind of assistance we can be, Jiraiya said as he bowed, which the others soon followed. No need to bow in front of me, Jiraiya, or any of you. We are comrades now. We will all train together in our fight for peace, the elder said as he rose and went to greet the group in the center of the room. He shook hands with each member and strongly gripped Naruto's hand. Naruto flashed a shy grin, still a bit in shock of the elder's words. I cannot fail. I will not fail. It's time to start counting down the days, Naruto thought. Few months later, though the Eastern Shinobi plus Saitama was allowed to stay and train, the elder never said it would be easy. Just moments after their meeting with him, the compound of Ryazanpaku came under attack from a neighboring warlord. Ryazanpaku sprung into action, defending the compound with all they had. True to their word, Jiraiya, Itachi, Kisame, Saitama, and Naruto all joined in the fight. It went without saying that the battle was lopsided, with Ryazanpaku winning easily. Yet it was evident that despite his potential, there was plenty of work needed to be done in Naruto's case. He had trouble holding his own against one opponent. His training began immediately. For the past few months, Naruto received training around the clock every day. Whether it was with Jiraiya, Itachi, Kisame, Saitama, or even Kenichi or Mew, Naruto was going at it. He had a rotating schedule every day of training that he would receive. If they were not fighting a neighboring clan or faction, Naruto was training. It was true that he got little sleep. However, the training was starting to pay dividends. Naruto was more than holding his own against multiple opponents. His ninjutsu skills were improving, his taijutsu was improving, he even started to hold his own against Kisame with a sword. Naruto was no longer a weak link. If anything, he was now a competent fighter. The only thing that didn't seem to be improving was his chakra control. His chakra was all out of whack because of the Kyuubi. Jiraiya had been loosening the seal on the Kyuubi, letting little by little of his chakra out for Naruto to use, yet nothing seemed to work. The chakra was a bit too strong for Naruto, even with Kisame helping him. There were a few times where Naruto nearly lost control, allowing the Kyuubi to take over him. Luckily, Jiraiya had his Fuinjutsu to slap onto Naruto before things got out of hand. Naruto was frustrated, to say the least. The damn Kyuubi was being hard to control. If he could just tap into the Kyuubi's power, it would allow him to become stronger so much faster. He cursed the stubborn Kyuubi, complaining about being stuck with him for the rest of his life. What Naruto didn't know, however, was that the Kyuubi had been watching him from the inside. The Kyuubi was observing Naruto, getting an eerie feeling that reminded him of someone. It was soon time to make his presence known once again. While Naruto was resting in his room one day, he was taken to his mindscape by the Kyuubi. What the hell? Where am I? Naruto asked himself as the Kyuubi crept his way to the bars that trapped him in. I've summoned you here, Gaki, the Kyuubi said, which forced Naruto to jump back. Damn you. It's you again. The one that's caused me all of these problems my entire life. Naruto yelled. Cry me a river, Gaki. You can blame the Yondaime for that. Anyway, that's beside the point and not the reason I've summoned you here. Then why am I here? Naruto asked, pissed that the source of his problems brought him here. Because I have been watching you. Seeing you go from an idiot prankster to a competent shinobi in just a few months. It's interesting to watch you humans grow. I would grow a lot faster if it wasn't for you. Ero Sennin said my chakra is all out of whack because of you, Naruto retorted to the Kyuubi. Like that old pervert knows anything about me. You could easily control my chakra, but you're still weak. You're even weaker than my previous jailer, the Kyuubi teased, only making Naruto madder. Look who's talking about being weak. Aren't you supposed to be the strongest of the Biju? Yet you easily got sealed by the Yondaime. Who's the weak one now? Naruto retorted. Are you trying to anger me, Gaki? The Kyuubi rose up, teeth showing. Did I make you angry? Isn't that cute? Between us, I'm not the weak one here. I'm your jailer. I decide whether to let you out or not. So why don't you be a good little inmate and shut up? Naruto teased, making the Kyuubi fuming mad. I should have killed you when I had the chance. If it wasn't for your parents, you definitely wouldn't be alive right now. Raged the Kyuubi. My parents? You. So you did kill my parents. Now it was Naruto's turn to get angry. HMPH. Why don't you ask that old pervert about your parents? He knew them very well. Maybe you'll see me a bit differently after. Now be gone, it was a mistake to summon you, Gaki. The Kyuubi waved him away as Naruto snapped out of it. What did the Kyuubi mean by asking Ero Sennin about his parents? Did Jiraiya somehow know Naruto's parents? Naruto walked over to Jiraiya's room and saw the Toad Sannin writing down some things for his new Ika Ika Tactics novel. He was planning on making a comeback here in the West. It seemed like there were perverts all over this place and he could take advantage of that and make decent book sales. Ero Sennin, Naruto asked as he walked into the room. Oh, Naruto, what can I do for you? The Toad Sannin asked, as he put away his writings and turned his attention to the young blonde. Did you know my parents? Naruto asked, much to Jiraiya's surprise. Why the sudden interest in your parents, Naruto? The Toad Sannin asked. I talked with the Kyuubi, he said you would know who my parents were. You talked to the Kyuubi? How? And what did he say about them? Jiraiya asked. He summoned me in my mindscape. He didn't say much about them, just that you knew them very well. If you know something Ero Sennin, please tell me, Naruto said. Jiraiya sighed. I wanted to do this when the time was right, but I guess the cat's out of the bag now. Come sit, Naruto. I have much to tell you, he said as he motioned the young shinobi to sit down. Jiraiya explained everything to Naruto. He explained that Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime, was his father and that Kushina Uzumaki was his mother. They both died the night that Naruto was born and that they died protecting Naruto from the Kyuubi. Jiraiya went on to explain their background and also how they had met and that he had trained Minato from an early age. He also explained the events of the night to Naruto, who was listening intently, with tears starting to form in his eyes and the anger starting to come back. Why didn't you tell me this? That you knew my parents or even that you knew me since birth? Where were you when I was an orphan? Better yet, where were you or Tsunade Ba-chan during my entire life? Naruto yelled, which attracted the attention of Itachi, Kisame, and Saitama. Jiraiya explained to Naruto the Sandame's law and how the deaths of Minato and Kushina affected both himself and Tsunade. Naruto was furious, to say the least. He was the son of the Yondaime, one of the greatest Hokages in Konoha. If people knew who he was, then he wouldn't have lived a shitty life like he had. The tears started to flow even more from Naruto now. Did they even love me? Did they know how hard I was going to have it? Having to carry the Kyuubi inside me for the rest of my life, Naruto said as the tears wouldn't stop. They loved you with all of their hearts, Naruto. That's why Minato sealed the Kyuubi in you, because he trusted and believed in you. He couldn't put the burden on anyone else's child. He was the Hokage of the village. Your parents sacrificed their lives for the village and for you. I know I haven't been a great godfather or even a great teacher for that fact. But when you told me your dream of peace, it only reminded me of your father. I've made it my goal, Naruto, to make sure that your dream of peace is realized in this world. I understand if you can't forgive for keeping this from you, but I want you to know that from now on, I am always going to have your back, Jiraiya said. As will I, Itachi spoke as he entered the room. That village spat on the dying wishes of their hero, how sickening. Naruto-san, I will always have your back, Saitama said. You can count me in, Gaki, Kisame said. Naruto's tears had stopped now. He couldn't believe the support he was now getting. This was a bit of a foreign concept to him still, yet, he appreciated it. Though he didn't like that Jiraiya had kept this information away from him, Naruto appreciated that the Toad Sannin had now divulged everything to him. Naruto didn't want to let his parents down. He couldn't. Not after they put so much of their trust into him. Thank you, he managed as the emotions started to overwhelm him. As time passed, the five of them returned to their rooms to get some rest. It was early morning, and tomorrow, anything could happen. As Naruto closed his eyes, he found himself back in his mindscape. He walked up to the bars that held the Kyuubi at bay. He noticed the seal that kept the Kyuubi from breaking free. What is it that you want, Gaki? I see the old pervert has told you everything. What do you think of me now? I don't know what to think of you now. You killed my parents. You nearly killed me. After hearing what Ero Sennin has said though, it has only made me more determined to achieve my goal. I just have one question for you, will you join me? I need to be as strong as possible to achieve my goal and you're one of the ways I can do that. I'll even lift the seal if you decide to help me, Naruto said, causing the Kyuubi to his brows a bit. The Kyuubi pondered this. He was very surprised by Naruto and how confident he sounded. He hated being sealed again into a human, especially by the Yondaime and Kushina, but the brat they produced was always surprising him. Watching his determination only increase made the Kyuubi very interested about what the future held for Naruto. I have just one condition, Gaki, he said. What is it? Naruto questioned. I get to finish what I started the night of your birth and burn Konoha to the ground, the Kyuubi said, a sly grin appearing on his face. Very well, was Naruto's answer, which elicited a large grin now from the fox. Just as Naruto was about to leave, he heard the Kyuubi mumble something under his breath. What was that? Naruto asked. Kurama. My name is Kurama, the Kyuubi answered. Kurama, huh? Well, nice to meet you, Kurama. Naruto smiled as he escaped his mindscape. As he looked outside his window, he could see the full moon in the night sky. Naruto knew now what his new mission was going to be. If he wanted peace, this was the way he needed to do it. There were plenty of people who believed in him now. He wasn't going to let any of them down. Tu-chan, Ka-chan. I won't let you guys down, he said as he prepared for bed. Genin Uzumaki Naruto, he saw his Ba-chan giving him his banishment orders in front of the Konoha Shinobi and Civilian Council. No, Ba-chan please. You have been hereby banished from Konoha, Tsunade finished. Naruto couldn't move. Dear, said a soft voice. Murderer. Look at what you've done to the only Uchiha. Yelled one villager. We need to get rid of him now before it's too late. Yelled another. I was only fulfilling my mission, Naruto said. Dear, came the voice again. That baka nearly killed Sasuke-kun. He looked like the Kyuubi incarnate himself. Hinata, Neji, Lee, Shino, Tenten, why won't you say anything? Naruto said, seeing his friends sitting in silence. Naruto, you have to wake up. Came the voice, louder this time. Naruto immediately shot up from his sleeping position. He was sweating profusely. His clothes were soaked and his side of the bed was drenched in sweat. His heart was racing 1,000 miles per hour as he tried to slow down his breathing. He rubbed his eyes before looking around the room. It was still dark, the moon illuminating through the window in the large room. It was only a dream, he thought as he looked down to see a pair of hands grab a hold of his. He looked up as his eyes met the eyes of the other occupant in the bed. Her large, violet eyes staring at him with concern on her face. Her long pink hair flowed down the entirety of her back as she sat up to look at him. She moved closer, giving him a small peck on the lips. Her hand now on his cheek, feeling the sweat and warmth that he was radiating. Silence filled the room as the two stared into each other's eyes. After a few moments of silence, she pulled him for a more passionate kiss. Their tongues fought for dominance over each other. Their hands feeling each other's bodies as they kissed like wild animals. After what seemed like minutes, they pulled apart, breathing heavily after their long make-out session. Naruto laid his head down in her lap, as she ran her hands through his hair. He was now calm, yet he was scared to close his eyes again, for fear of going back to sleep and see those memories. He just stared into space, enjoying the comfort of the woman's touch. I'm sorry I woke you, Yuffie, he said, still staring at nothing. It's okay, dear, she loving replied as she leaned down to kiss his forehead. The Yuffie Naruto was referring to was none other than the former princess of the Britannia family, Euphemia Lee Britannia. She is a former princess because now she is the Empress of the United Western Empire and more importantly, Naruto's wife. She was second in command, only below Naruto, and was in charge of the more civilian matters in the empire. She was kind and fair, yet strict when she needed to be, and the people loved her. They loved her, just as much as they loved her husband. Over the past 6 years, things had changed drastically in the Western continent. There was no more fighting. Naruto's dreams of peace had been achieved. It took 3 long years of constant fighting and diplomacy, but the peace that had been sought after for thousands of years in the West had been realized, and the main reason was because of Naruto. He had become a central figure in what was now known as the Thousand-Year War. With the training from Jiraiya, Itachi, Kisame, Saitama, and Ryuzanpaku, Naruto became a force to be reckoned with. No matter how outmanned or outnumbered, Naruto could easily turn the tide of any battle. His attitude and demeanor brought many strong allies to their side as well. Different factions decided to join, rather than fight Naruto due to his strength. His diplomatic abilities were also put on display, allowing there to be less loss of life. Though he was a great hero during the war, Naruto was not the first pick to become emperor. In fact, he wasn't even among those that were in consideration to become emperor. Jiraiya, Hayato Furinji, and Lelouch V. Britannia were among the candidates that were in consideration at first. However, all three had turned the nomination down due to the fact that they knew Naruto was the perfect one for the job. They all knew that he had this charisma about him that everyone loved. He had the it factor and was a natural-born leader. If it wasn't for Naruto, the war may never have ended. During this time, Naruto had met and had fallen in love with Euphemia during the war. When he had become emperor, it was a no-brainer for Naruto to ask Euphemia to marry him, which she accepted immediately. They have been happily married for 3 years as they oversee the era of peace in the West. Unfortunately, the painful memories of the past were something Naruto couldn't let go of. You had the nightmare again? Euphemia asked. Yeah, was Naruto's response as Euphemia continued to play with her husband's hair. Naruto moved a bit, now facing up towards his wife. No matter what I do, the nightmares won't stop coming back, he said as his wife leaned down with another peck on the lips. She remained close to him, their foreheads touching as the two closed their eyes, enjoying the closeness. They will pay for what they've done to you. You should have never gone through that, especially when you were so young. I can't wait for the day when my emperor shows them that the past has a way of catching up, she finished. In due time, Yuffie. They will find out what the former Konoha dead last can really do, Naruto said as the two remained in their bed until sunrise. While everything in the West was going well, Konoha was a different story. Konoha Hokage Office. It had been 6 years since Naruto's banishment and Konoha had seen better days. Especially for the Hokage, who despite being a figure of great importance, had turned into nothing more than just a figurehead. Sitting in the Hokage seat was a man wearing a mask along with his Hitai covering his left eye. Despite being the Hokage, he still wore his Junin uniform and always carried a copy of Ika Tactics on him. He was currently in the process of trying to complete the enemy no Hokage had ever defeated. Paperwork. Kakashi sighed as he stamped yet another document of importance. He never wanted this job in the first place, but with Tsunade's orders, he reluctantly accepted. Flashback. Like they had planned, Tsunade immediately resigned after Naruto's banishment. She cited that she needed a vacation for all the shit she had to put up with. She made it clear that no one would come to look for her, or else there would be repercussions. This immediately threw the council room into chaos. Both the civilian and the shinobi side of the councils were in an uproar. This was a crucial time for them, especially with war brewing on the horizon, and losing one of their most powerful shinobi was sure to do them in. However, a few proceeded to throw their names into the hat in order to get the Hokage title. Danzo was the one who seemed like a favorite, through the use of his hidden Sharingan and also because he basically had the civilian council in the palm of his hand. Luckily, Tsunade was prepared for this. She mentioned that Kakashi would take the title as the Rokudaime, much to the disappointment of Danzo and his supporters. They wanted to challenge this appointment until the Fire Daimyo showed up and made it clear that he had approved this hire. Though the daimyo deemed Kakashi young and inexperienced, he was the best leader that could keep watch on things and also defend the village, citing that Kakashi was one of the most powerful shinobi currently in Konoha. When the Fire Daimyo left, Tsunade reminded everyone to not come looking for her. She said that there was only one person that could bring her back on her own free will. That someone was Uzumaki Naruto. End flashback. Kakashi sighed again. He could only think back to how this entire situation escalated from one thing to another. Flashback. He was sent away on a mission the moment he returned with Naruto and Sasuke from the Uchiha retrieval mission. The mission was handed to him by an Anbu he didn't recognize. However, the mission scroll was signed by Tsunade herself. He had no choice but to comply. It was not a coincidence that he was sent away so quickly after he returned. When he returned to find out that Naruto had been banished, he was furious. He wanted to go after Naruto and tried to resign, but he was coerced into staying by Tsunade. He was the only one she trusted and needed him to help her give any information about Konoha's actions towards Naruto, knowing that Danzo would do anything to get his hands on the boy. They immediately went to the Fire Daimyo and convinced him and his court that this was the right course of action. The Fire Daimyo didn't have much say when it came to shinobi affairs and had not been notified of the vote to banish Naruto. He was disappointed, but his hands were tied. However, he approved Tsunade's request of handing the mantle of Hokage to Kakashi, despite some of his reservations about the copy ninja's qualifications. When he became Hokage, he found out that the village had lost all of the alliances they had in place. Wave, Spring, and Suna had torn up the alliances once they heard of the details surrounding Naruto's banishment. Naruto had made a great impact on each one of these nations. It had brought Konoha in a good light to see that one of their own was making a great impact in other nations. However, when Naruto was banished for a traitor, their allies had lost all respect for Konoha. This made Kakashi think of all the people he failed to protect: Minato, Kushina, Rin, and Obito. During this time, he was reminded that despite one's personal loss, he would always need to be loyal to the village. The village held the will of fire to help those who have lost family or comrades to continue on with their lives. What bullshit. Tsunade convinced Kakashi to become Hokage, but he had every intention to skip town once Tsunade contacted him about Naruto's whereabouts. Unfortunately, weekly reports started to turn into monthly reports, then every few months he would get another report. Finding Naruto was harder than Tsunade imagined. Until then, he would have to manage being Hokage to the best of his abilities. What made it worse though was that Konoha was now being led by a Jonin with little political experience in a time where war was brewing. Kumo, Oto, and Iwa had formed an alliance together and were beginning on their assault on the eastern lands. The power-hungry Raikage and Tsuchikage agreed to this alliance purely for larger land territories and resources for their villages. Konoha was also a prime target since it was still considered one of the powerful shinobi villages. Yet without Jiraiya's spy network and their Jinchuriki, they were anything but powerful. Konoha also had no one who could really face off against Orochimaru by themselves, even though many claimed they could. The Snake Sanin brought both Kumo and Iwa together in hopes that he would return to Konoha and become its destroyer. Despite his earlier disappointments, Danzo took advantage of Kakashi being appointed the Hokage. He knew that Kakashi wasn't strong enough nor experienced enough to lead. This allowed Danzo to do as he pleased from the shadows like he always did. When his squad of Root Anbu that he had sent out to find Naruto after the banishment order returned empty-handed, Danzo's plans hit a setback. Yet he knew that he just needed to buy his time. He knew that once the people saw that Kakashi wasn't fit to be Hokage, it would be him that would take the mantle and lead Konoha to greatness once again. Before Tsunade resigned, Kakashi thought a little bit about being appointed Hokage and figured maybe it would be a good thing to have some power. He could change things that his Minato-sensei wanted to happen and also protect Naruto in some way. How wrong he would be. His first day on the job, the civilian council voted to put Naruto and Jiraiya in the bingo book. When Kakashi found out about this, he immediately ordered them to undo it. Tsunade had been able to keep Naruto and Jiraiya's name out the bingo book during her tenure through threats and physical violence. However, with Tsunade gone now, the council saw it as their window to act. Then he came to find out that the civilian council had somehow reinstated Sasuke Uchiha into the shinobi program. Kakashi tried to overturn this decision, but again the council voted in favor, though there were those in the shinobi council who vehemently opposed this. Then the following month the civilian council came together to enact the Clan Restoration Act for the Uchiha. Sasuke had requested that he rebuild his clan and would like to enact the CRA. Since this was considered more a civilian matter, the civilians held the most influence on the decisions. Sasuke had originally chosen Sakura Haruno as his main wife, however, once he saw a changed Hinata sparring with her team, he immediately took a liking to how strong she became. He thought that she would produce him powerful offspring to bring back the might of the Uchiha clan. He chose Sakura, Ino, Tenten, and Anko as secondary wives. He had chosen them out of pure lust, only wanting them for their bodies and heirs that they would produce. A big wedding was to be held for Sasuke and Hinata, all funded by the civilian council themselves. The shinobi were furious. Inoichi Yamanaka and Hiyashi Hyuga, especially, since it was their daughters that were to be married to the traitor. Anko was also opposed, stating she'd rather Orochimaru than the Uchiha. Hiyashi, with his quick thinking though, had Hinata go on many diplomatic missions outside of the village to improve village relations, but more to stall the wedding until the shinobi could find a way to end it altogether. Although they had supported the decision of banishment initially, there were some on the shinobi council who had regretted their decisions on the matter. The original Ino Shikacho was one of them, Might Guy, and also Hiyashi Hyuga. They knew that Naruto carried the burden of being the Kyuubi. Most of them at first wanted nothing to do with him, despite knowing who his parents were. It was only after he was banished that they started to see the impact he had made in others' lives, including their own children. Speaking of their children, the Konoha 11 had also changed during the years after Naruto's banishment. Sasuke was sentenced to house arrest and forbidden to study the arts of the shinobi until she saw it fit to release him, which would have been never. Tsunade had imposed this punishment, and when the council tried to undermine her authority, the fire daimyo showed up and reinforced the law. He also added a stipulation that if anyone was caught to help the Uchiha, they would publicly be executed along with the precious Uchiha. Sasuke's house arrest only made him more thirsty for power. He realized that the Dobi had matched him and that if he wanted to kill Itachi, he would need more power. He vowed that he would become the most powerful shinobi on earth. A god among men, he thought. From his house, he also got a look at Hinata Hyuga during her beatdown of Kiba and Shino. He saw how powerful she had become in such a little time and wanted her to produce his offspring. Sasuke also knew that Hinata still loved Naruto and that if he could steal her away, he would be dealing a blow to the Dobi. Sakura had never gotten over her Sasuke obsession. She visited him every day while he was in the hospital and during his house arrest, despite his cold attitude towards her. Eventually, she was placed on a different team but still would proclaim to everyone how her Sasuke-kun was the greatest ever. Despite being a huge Sasuke fangirl when she was younger, Ino had grown out of her obsession with the Uchiha. A while later she heard that Sasuke actually tried to leave the village and saw the mission reports of what he had done to Naruto. It was then that she decided that he was not worth her future and instead focused on training with Shikamaru and Choji. They had all made Chunin at the next exams that were held in Suna, despite the hostility they received by the Sand and its shinobi. They also regretted turning their backs on Naruto in his time in need, Ino included. They had hoped they would meet him again one day and ask for his forgiveness by any means possible. Team Guy had all become Jonin within a couple of years after Naruto's banishment and all had had their very own genin squads. Neji and Lee had made up their minds that they would become the best shinobi they could for Naruto's sake. They never forgot what he had done for them, and despite some of their friends turning their backs on Naruto, they decided to do the right thing and honor him whenever they could. The one that changed the most, however, was Hinata. When Naruto was banished, she shut herself out from everybody. She had locked herself in her room for nearly 2 weeks. When she came out, she transformed from the shy, stuttering girl to a cold and ruthless fighter. It didn't matter if you were a friend, family, or just a plain stranger to Hinata. You talked shit about Naruto and you would get your handed to you. 2 Hyuga main branch members learned that the hard way. Kiba also never shied away from insulting Naruto when he got the chance, and while Shino remained quiet, it felt as though he thought that banishment wasn't the right decision. When Hinata resumed training with her team, they sparred with each other, which resulted in Hinata nearly killing both Kiba and Shino. She used her gentle fist more aggressively than Kiba and Shino had ever seen before. She was only stopped when Kurenai and Asuma combined put her down before she actually killed her teammates. Hiashi saw the change in his daughter and was growing very concerned. Though he was the one who pushed her to become stronger, he didn't like how she eventually turned out. He truly did love her and only pushed her so that she would one day be a great clan head. He started to miss her shy demeanor that he had come to know and love, even though he never showed it. The Hyuga elders also saw that Hinata was getting out of hand and harder to control, so they forcefully moved to brand Hinata with the caged bird seal and put her in the house branch. Hiashi was opposed, but the elders overruled his judgment. Funny how elders and councils seem to have more power than clan heads or the Hokage. Interesting. Hinata was then chosen to be the main wife of Sasuke Uchiha, which the Hyuga elders immediately accepted. Having offspring with 2 of the most powerful Kekkei Genkei would be their ticket to becoming the most powerful clan in Konoha and also, in the future, the Hokage seat. Hiyashi's father was the one who led the biggest push for Hinata's arranged marriage, only seeing his granddaughter as the ticket to the Hyuga being immortalized. End flashback. Kakashi snapped out of his thoughts when a knock came to his door. "Come in," he said as a squad that he handpicked came into the room. "You called for us, Hokage-sama," spoke Asuma as himself, Kurenai, Ino Shika Cho-2, Neji, Rock Lee, Tenten, Kiba, Shino, and Hinata entered the paper-filled office space. Kaharu, Homura, and Danzo also entered behind them, though they were uninvited. Kakashi paid them no mind though. "Yes, I did. I don't need to remind you all that the village has been going through some rough times. We have lost many of our previous alliances and are in desperate need of new ones. I have chosen all of you for this mission. It is an S-rank mission of the utmost importance," spoke Kakashi as his voice sounded considerably tired and worn out. Even though he the Hokage job, it still took a toll on him. Though he was still young, taking the Hokage position really aged him. "I have managed to gain an audience with the West." The shinobi and elders in the room were shocked. The empire to the west had only surfaced a few years ago. They heard the war stories of the West and couldn't believe that now it was a unified continent. Members of the Konoha 11 also perked up at this because there were rumors that the West was where Naruto had gone after his banishment. Not to mention that the Konoha 11 had met the Emperor a few times in battle. They did not know it at the time, but almost all of the Konoha 11 had fought him and were defeated. He knew how they fought and easily picked them apart as though they were a play doll. Only when the Uchiha had met the Emperor in battle and returned to Konoha in serious condition did they find out that the man with the Tengu mask was the Emperor of the West. It seemed strange to Kakashi that the Emperor would welcome the envoy from Konoha despite their earlier meetings. However, in desperate times Kakashi needed to take that chance to gain an ally. Any ally would do at this point or else Konoha would eventually fall. He also held out hope that Naruto would be in the West. Now, like I said, gaining allies is very important. This village cannot go through a war without any help. We are going to be targeted soon, and if we fight in our current situation, we won't stand a chance, Kakashi explained. If you have gained an audience with the West, then it would be best if I also went with the group to see if they are strong and powerful like the reports have stated. Danzo spoke, though he also wanted to see if the West could be overtaken once Konoha had won this war. Kakashi looked at the old man with a questionable look. He knew Danzo would be up to something, but he didn't know what. I think it would be a good idea, Hokage-sama, spoke up Kaharu. Danzo has expertise in observing power and would be valuable on this mission, she stated as though the decision was already made. Kakashi wanted no arguments and just agreed. I see, I guess it wouldn't hurt. Just make sure none of you do anything stupid to anger the West. The mission is to gain allies, not make more enemies, understood? As he looked directly at Danzo with that last part. Very well, Hokage-sama, I will be taking Sasuke Uchiha and Sai with me as my protection detail, Danzo said flatly. Hinata and Ino grew nauseous at the mere mention of the Uchiha. What's wrong with this group right here? You have more than enough protection with this group of shinobi? Questioned Kakashi. Oh, there is nothing wrong. I just believe that in order to further ensure my protection, the Uchiha and Sai should also accompany me, explained the one-eyed elder. Very well, you have 1 hour to pack your belongings and you will set off immediately after that. The future of Konoha is in your hands. Kakashi stated, then dismissed everyone from his office. As he looked out the window at the Hokage monument, Kakashi got this ominous feeling that the mission he had just set up would fail and that the past would soon catch up to Konoha. Minato-sensei, please forgive for everything that has happened. I've failed in protecting both you and Kushina. I failed in protecting Rin and Obito. And now I've failed in protecting your son. Kakashi thought to himself as tears started to fall from his eyes. He took off his Hitai and wept in his office. Despite having no more love for Konoha, this was a place that gave Kakashi so many memories. He found parental figures in Minato and Kushina. He found teammates who he actually cared about. He was given students that were different from the others, that he even grew attached to. He was still suffering from some indecisiveness. Konoha was always his home and he fought tooth and nail to protect it. Yet, it was the fact that Naruto was his responsibility and he failed his sensei and his sensei's wife. They would never forgive him. He needed to make up for it somehow. He wanted to make sure Naruto was safe and to make sure he found out about his true heritage. As the Hokage was letting out his tears, an ominous figure observed him from a safe distance. He grinned under his orange, spiral mask and shunshin to another part of the village. The figure ended up in the Konoha cemetery. He found the graves that said, Rin Nohara, and, Obito Uchiha. He saw that the flowers had just recently been replaced from the last time he had visited. He took the flowers from both graves and crushed them in his hands. After taking one last glance,